Hey there folks, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of the brand new book, Jazz Piano Fundamentals, Book 2, as well as, of course, Jazz Piano Fundamentals, Book 1, and everybody's favorite book, Playing Solo Jazz Piano. And today, by a comment request, I'm going to talk about playing the bridge of rhythm changes. So, the bridge of rhythm changes is kind of interesting because on one hand, it's so much easier than the A section, right? In the A section of rhythm changes, the chords are changing every 2 beats. And the challenge really is keeping up. But in the bridge, we actually have the exact opposite problem. The harmonic rhythm slows down to 1 chord every 2 measures, and the harmony becomes very simple. Generally, the harmony goes around the circle of fifths. So in the key of B flat, which is the most common key for rhythm changes, we go from D7 for 2 measures, to G7 for 2 measures, and then to C7 for 2 measures, and F7 for 2 measures. And so conversely to the A section, where we're wondering about, okay, how do we keep up? How do we just simply address this harmony? What we're wondering in the B section is, how do I make this interesting? How do I create enough motion that this actually feels like, that this actually feels like an interesting improvisation? So this is actually addressed, like so many things are, in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2, and I want to walk you through the 3 suggestions that I give you with some of the examples from the book. So the 3 suggestions that I give are here. I don't know how well you can see. Transpose the same 2-measure melodic phrase through the circle of fifths. So you can create interest by repeating and maybe slightly varying a single motive again and again. I'm going to go through all 3 and then I'll walk through them in a little bit more detail. The second one is to add minor chords in front of each of the dominant chords to create 2-5 progressions. So instead of just sitting on the dominant chord for 2 measures each, make it into a little 2-5. I'll show you how to do that. And then letter C says use alterations and altered dominant scales like the Lydian dominant, the altered scale, the octatonic scale, and the whole tone scale to create more color on the dominant 7th chords, right? This is the beauty of dominant 7th chords, is that we can add alterations and use these altered scales. So letter A shows working the same motif through rhythm changes. Now, what you're going to notice is that in letter A, I've literally transposed this motive. But if I were actually playing this, I would probably make some sort of a small variation as I went through. Maybe start it on a slightly different beat, maybe add a pickup, maybe add a tail to the phrase. But we'll play around with that in just a second. So let me play this example for you, and I'll tell you what, I'll let you see the keyboard a little better. So here's letter A. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, by the 4th time, I want a little bit of variation. I don't know if you guys know the rule of 3s. This is true through so many art forms. Like in fairy tales, it's always the 3rd one from which you move on. And this is generally a pretty solid rule with music repetitions as well. After the 3rd repetition, we're generally ready for something to change. So that's the purest kind of form. But if I'm actually doing it, I might go... I had to really change that last one. I was altering the rhythm a little bit in the first repetition, and then the 2nd repetition, and then I really changed it in the last one. So let's do one more version. So the 4th, the measure 7 and 8, I guess I should say, the 4th time through this 2-bar phrase, still always has something to do with what came before. Like, for example, there, I still had kind of a 3-note ending. in a very similar rhythm to what I had before, but the shape changed. I'll give you a different example. I don't know if that transition was perfect, but it was close enough that we heard something repeating between those phrases. Right? That's also really fun. Okay, so that's strategy 1. Strategy 2 is to add a minor 7th chord in front of each of the dominants. So you could see I've marked here, I'm implying A minor, I'm implying D minor, so the progression kind of becomes A minor 7 to D7, D minor 7 to G7, G minor 7 to C7, etc. Now, if you're a scale person and you're thinking about the Dorian mode and then the Mixolydian mode, you'll say, well, nothing changes between those two, so what difference does it make? But the big difference is that when you're thinking about A minor, the 7th of the chord, in this case G natural, is a chord tone and really wants to resolve to the 3rd of the D7. So we're hearing. So that makes a huge difference here. And psychologically for me, it creates that possibility of so much more movement in here. So I'll let you see my fingers. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I love that. And on almost every one of the dominant chords, I'm aiming for the 3rd of that chord. To emphasize the motion again from the 7th of the minor chord to the 3rd of the dominant chord. This is one of our biggest guide tone lines in music. So that's really what's going through my head. Of course, these two ideas that I've shown you can be combined. I could do a repetitive phrase that implies a minor 2 to a 5. And that way we have both continuity and we have this motion being created. Now, the third idea, the third strategy that I want to share with you is using altered dominant chords, and along with that, fun altered scales. So which ones might you think about? You might think about the Lydian dominant, so mixed Lydian with a sharp 4. Or getting a little wilder, we can think about the half whole octatonic. Or a whole tone. Or the altered scale, which people sometimes call the diminished dominant or the superlocrian. So this example that I give you, it kind of mixes, right? The first two chords, I'm using the whole tone scale, and then after that, I'm using the half whole octatonic scale. So let me see if I can read this through for you. So 1, 2. Sorry, forgot my accidental. I'll start one more time. You could use the same altered scale, you could make the entire bridge whole tone. Right? Make the whole bridge octatonic. So, any of those are possibilities. Or you could totally mix and have each dominant chord be different. Now, let's just, as a last kind of fun thing, let's combine all three of these. So I'm going to do now a minor 7th chord, not using an altered scale. And then when I go to the dominant, I am going to use an altered scale. So, so that way we have both the motion and we have the color of the altered scale. And if we want that continuity, motivic development organization, I don't think I did that right. I could keep the same motive going and transpose it. And by the way, it's not really crucial that you literally transpose it. In fact, I'll give you an idea, which is that if you transpose for a dominant chord, right, if we're just taking D7, if you transpose down by half step, you're going to be at the tritone sub for the next dominant chord. So for example, if I were going to just transpose down the simple arpeggio here, right, that's going down by a half step from C, D, F sharp, A, outlining a D7 to B, A flat, F, D flat, outlining a D flat 7. So you don't have to necessarily transpose in the circle of fifths. You could also transpose down by a half step. That way you're creating alterations on that chord, well, really just every other chord, but it gets quite interesting, right? But, you could also play the same motif, but not literally transpose it in any way. Just take the same shape. I'm just going to start picking random notes to start on. I'm not really doing mental transposition of, okay, I'm starting on the 9th each time. Just trying to play that same shape over and over. All right, so in summary, 3 really great ways to improvise over the bridge of rhythm changes. We can add organization, they can add movement, and they can add color. Add organization by playing similar melodic phrases every 2 measures. Add motion by interpolating, that's a fancy word for you, some minor chords and creating little minor 2/5 progressions. And then add color by using alterations and particularly altered dominant scales on the bridge of rhythm changes. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Just a reminder, this information, all these examples, and a heck of a lot more is in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2, available now from jeremysiskind.com, as well as if you want it internationally at amazon.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.